We are talking about a NAS, or a network attached storage. In short, a NAS is a group of disks, a piece of hardware that contains a group of disks running some software that are then presented as one or more logical disks to essentially provide a particular service to a business, or perhaps even in a home. As the name suggests, it is a storage device that is connected to the network. So think about it like this. You've got a USB hard drive that you have maybe purchased, a USB thumb drive or a hard drive that you connect into your computer as a USB hard drive. That is a USB hard drive. A network attached storage is like that, but that is connected onto the network and is accessible over the network. So any device that is on the network can potentially connect and use the services that have been provided by that NAS. It stores all of that data, any data that you particularly want to store, in a centrally managed location. So think about again the scenario of a USB hard drive. If you buy yourself a 2 terabyte USB hard drive, you then run out of storage, you then go down to the shop, you buy yourself a 4 terabyte hard drive, you now have a 2 terabyte and a 4 terabyte hard drive that you are running into a computer. What you could potentially do is buy yourself a NAS that has some slots inside of it, a physical hardware NAS that has some slots to be able to install hard drives. That is then presented on the network, and you can essentially access all of that data from one central location. So unlike a USB hard drive, you buy a USB hard drive and you are stuck with that 2 terabyte or 4 terabyte hard drive. And NAS is generally expandable. So depending on the NAS that you buy, you can add additional hard drives. Once your NAS chassis is full, you can generally then buy a second chassis or a disk array. You attach it into that first disk array, and then you can expand your NAS and expand the storage that that NAS is providing. But think about a NAS like a private cloud. You've heard of services such as Dropbox, OneDrive, even AWS and Azure have their own versions of private clouds for storage. Well, essentially what this is a private cloud that you are managing internally. So it becomes a cloud, not really a cloud, but it becomes a private storage network for you to use within your organization or within your home on your network. You then control the hardware, you control the software, you control the permissions, you control how much storage you put into it, you control how you expand it, you control the maintenance of it and the support of that particular device internally, rather than, offshoring that to a cloud provider. What you will do with a NAS is you will have all of these disks that you put into a physical NAS, and then you combine these disks together into what's called RAID groups. You create storage pools, you create volumes that are then presented to a network. So I could have myself 4 2 terabyte hard drives that I provide inside of that NAS, and I can create different RAID groups to do different things, different benefits and pros and cons between different RAID groups. But I can create one big disk that is 8 terabytes. I can create a smaller 6 terabyte drive, which is rated over a RAID 5 that has redundancy. The main purpose of that would be so that if one disk fails, I don't lose all of my data. But really the whole point is that you bundle all of these disks together to allow for larger disks, virtual, essentially logical disks that you are then providing to the network. You can then create different permissions on your your volumes that you're creating. Let's say I create a volume of a 2 terabyte disk made up of 2 1 terabyte physical hard drives. I then can create permissions on who I want to be able to access this, what users, what services want to be able to access this. You can bind a NAS to Active Directory as well if you want to take leverage of LDAP or AD permissions through a domain, or you can create local permissions on a NAS also to the different volumes that you've got created. Volumes you can create are, for example, SMB shares, NFS shares, which essentially are the combinations of those disks that are the RAIDs and the storage pools that you've created that are made up of physical hard drives that are inside the NAS. NASs come in all shapes and sizes. You can get really small ones that are combined, combinations of 2 disks, up to potentially hundreds of disks in a large corporate enterprise space that will require I guess if you have a requirement of terabytes, petabytes worth of storage. So you can really expand a NAS into extremely large, I guess, groupings of disks, depending on the storage needs. So in the olden days, you would just have a file server that you'd have a physical disk connected inside of a server in a PC, and that can become your file server, and that's where you store all of your data. What you do now is you have what's called a NAS, and that replaces your traditional file server, and now you are managing all of your files and everything all within a hardware-based storage network. Certain NAS vendors also allow you to install additional software. So some NAS vendors could be, for example, Synology or QNAP, and they have their own operating system running, some version of Linux, and you can actually then go and download and install software directly onto the NAS. Other larger end vendors such as Dell EMC, HP, Lenovo may not have that sort of flexibility that the lower end NASs may have. So that is my simple overall summary of what a NAS is.